high school. And we're still gathering more information on that because we don't have everything that happened yet. There's quite a lot of information pouring in, but as soon as more comes in, we will certainly let you know. Right now, we're waiting on a press conference from the sheriff's department over there in Oregon. So, of course, you can listen at Hot News Live at 5 to hear all the updates on the Oregon college shooting. And oddly enough, I might be able to offer a little bit of insight into his online habits because he and I sort of frequented, I don't want to say frequented the same circles, but we use the same website sometimes, which is probably not something I should admit, but yeah, it's kind of true. So there's been a lot of misinformation on Twitter, especially different things popping up about the Oregon shooter. Popping about like, oh, well, look, you saw that he used this website, and look how bad this website is, and all these different things. A lot of it is satire. It's not meant to be sort of a serious thing. Like, people probably don't get that because news media people tend to gloss over details and sort of look at things and say, oh, well, this is how it is, and we're going to continue on with this without doing any sort of in-depth analysis. So especially when we're talking about a website like that one, when news media looks at it, they never get it, and that's just the way it is. That's just the name of the game when we're talking about news media. They tend to not actually get the internet a lot of the time. But we're going to talk more about that at Hot News Live at 5, so be sure to tune in. Hot News Live at 5 is on every weekday except for Monday here at 5 o'clock on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Lots of stuff coming out about T-Mobile. Now, T-Mobile, of course, is one of the larger carriers. It's one of the big three. You have AT&T, you have Verizon, and you have T-Mobile. Most people, even if they're using something like H2O or Ultra or what's the other one? Metro PCS or one of those other subcontractors, they're actually getting it from one of the big three. Whether they realize it or not, they probably actually are. Because, again, that's just the nature of these carriers. Because pretty much three companies own all of the cell towers and all the cell coverage and the bandwidth and everything. So if you're getting coverage, even from a third party, you're actually probably getting it from one of the big three. Because, again, that's just how these cell networks work. That's just how it is. When we're talking about cell phones, that's just how they are. Like, for instance, I use Ultra Mobile, which actually pulls off of T-Mobile. So I'm technically using the T-Mobile network, although my billing information and everything like that is actually routed through Ultra Mobile. So I like to think I have an extra layer of security, but we'll get into that in a second. T-Mobile US says that it has more money than it needs as it's getting ready for a major spectrum auction that's scheduled for early next year. According to Ars Technica, the company's wanting to get enough low-band spectrum to cover the whole United States. And it's going to be able to achieve that with billions of dollars to spare. T-Mobile CFO Braxton Carter said today at a financial conference hosted in Arizona by Deutsche Bank, I wonder where they're getting their funding from. So after consulting with the major credit rating agencies, T-Mobile found that it can spend up to $10 billion without harming its ratings. Now, in case you don't know, $10 billion is kind of a lot of money. So spending $10 billion on a project such as cell towers is pretty substantial. So that's up to $10 billion, not meaning that they will necessarily absolutely spend $10 billion. But even so, that's a lot of money to throw around and potentially use to build a giant cell network. And that's the purpose of it. The purpose is a 4G LTE network going all across the land, all across the United States. After consulting with the major credit rating agencies, T-Mobile found that it can actually spend $10 billion without hurting its ratings. So that's not bad. The Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, which we are, of course, under here at Hot News Talk Radio, will shift airwaves into the 600 megahertz range from TV broadcasters over to wireless carriers, which is really where it should have been in the first place. And it's just really annoying how this didn't happen earlier. That's the thing, is that we could have done this ages ago. This whole, 600 megahertz? Yeah, 600 megahertz range from television could be used for so many different things because it's like the perfect frequency for getting a signal out to a huge, wide area. Because it's not quite high enough to be super line of sight, and it's just low enough to be sort of hugging the terrain a little bit, but not like a huge amount. And it's perfect. It's really great bandwidth. And we could totally use that for cell coverage or for huge Wi-Fi networks or anything you could ever want. It's amazing. The Federal Communications Commission says that it's going to be auctioning off that 600 megahertz range. Now, if T-Mobile can snag that, oh man. So one macro cell tower that uses low band spectrum can cover the same geographic area as 5 macro cells using the mid-band spectrum that T-Mobile typically relies upon, Carter says. Now, I will have to say this. This does come with a downside in that our phones, possibly anyway, can't actually tune to 600 megahertz already. So we might need to buy new phones to achieve that. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily how it's going to be, but if this is, say, a new standard, then that's going to be a bit of a problem. But probably T-Mobile already has that in mind. So there's probably a fix for that. I just don't know what it is because I'm not too savvy on how cell phone tuning works, but I'll do some research on that and get back to you. So these low band frequencies are crucial for building a cellular network that can cover long distances. Keep in mind, the lower the frequency, generally goes like this anyway. I'm not a radio technician, but I have a little bit of insight. Generally speaking, the lower the frequency, the more coverage you can potentially get. So think about VLF, very low frequency, which is what submarines at least used to emit, with long, long antennas that stretch from literally miles behind them. And they would put out pulses. And you can actually pick that up from literally across the world, because these low frequencies sort of hug the earth and travel around it. That's why AM actually gets really good coverage if it has enough power. So AM is a wonderful, wonderful bandwidth. It's just that if you have low power, you're not going to get much coverage. Fortunately, we have quite a bit of power and we have quite a bit of coverage here at AM 1240. But we're covering the whole entire world on the internet. Just go to hotnewstalkradio.com and you can listen to us streaming live on the internet that way. And we don't really need to worry about power that way, do we? Because it's sort of in someone else's hands. If the servers go down, well, there's always a backup. So there's no problem there. You can always listen to us 24/7 on hotnewstalkradio.com. If you have a smartphone, which chances are you do, you can get the TuneIn Radio app for said smartphone and then search for Hot News Talk Radio, where you can listen to us streaming live that way. And that's another great way to listen to us streaming live, is through your smartphone. If you have one of those fancy schmancy new radios that has Bluetooth built in, then you can Bluetooth yourself in from your phone to your car radio, and you can listen to us like you're right here in the studio with us. It's great. So just get the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone and then search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hey, Eric Judd said, Mr. Judd said on his show, the Mr. Judd Show at 11, that I would talk about my misadventures in Nashville. And so I will. It's actually not nearly as exciting as he makes it out to sound. I went to Nashville to see some of my comedic heroes, Riff Tracks, aka Mystery Science Theater 3000. And oh man, it was such an experience, really, because these guys seriously are my comedic heroes. These guys are part of why I want to do what I'm doing now, and to see them in person was such an experience. It was really good. It was just great. It was a great experience all around. Riff Tracks is really good too. I'm not being paid by them to say that or anything, but if you want to check them out, you can go to their website. Riff Tracks, RIFFTRAX, I believe, and you can search for them that way, and it's really good stuff. So check it out if you want to, or not, that's cool too. The basic idea is they talk over movies, and they commentate on movies in a really, really funny way, and that commentary is part of what got me wanting to get into the broadcast industry, watching how they did things on KTMA, which was a public access station way back in the 80s. Watching how they made do with so few materials and made such a funny show was just a huge inspiration to me. So it was really good to see them live and in person. So it was just a great experience overall. So anyway, T-Mobile is buying up the 600 mega, or is hoping anyway, spending $6 billion to buy up the 600 megahertz band. And that's a good thing for us, because even if you're not a T-Mobile subscriber, that means that other companies have to compete. Competition is kind of what a free market is based upon. Fortunately, we have some semblance of a free market here in the US, so competition is rampant, except for when there are, agreements between companies saying that we won't compete for a certain amount of time and yada, yada. But you get the idea. Competition is pretty much rampant here in the States. And that's great, because that means that we get stuff out of it. Here in our capitalist society, our capitalist big society, we get lots of great stuff out of competition. For instance, we got really good stuff out of the competition in home video, where, say, VHS was coming out, and VHS was pretty cool. Betamax was the big competitor. Betamax had really good quality, but it was more expensive. Then you had Laserdisc. My my sort of pet project is to collect Laserdiscs. Don't get me started about my Laserdisc collection, by the way. It's seriously one of the dumber things that I do is collect Laserdisc, but it's also, there's just something fun about it. I don't know. I don't do it to be like ironic hipster. Ooh, look at me, I collect Laserdiscs. It's just fun to me. There's just something fun about them. I just like it a lot. But anyway, so you had that battle between all these different formats. And what did we get out of it? We got good movies that we could buy and watch in our houses on 3 different formats that we could choose from. Now, yeah, Betamax kind of died out. Laserdisc kind of died out in the late 90s. The Matrix was one of the last major motion pictures released on Laserdisc. And then DVD came around. And so we got a lot of great videos and movies, I should say, on home video out of that competition. There was that push to be better. So the cell network system has sort of been stagnant for a while because there hasn't really been a push to be better. There's not been a whole lot of real competition. I mean, yeah, T-Mobile has been doing the uncarrier thing, but really there's not like an immense amount of difference between the different carriers. Like people say, oh, AT&T is terrible, and then they switch to Verizon, they say, oh, Verizon's terrible, and they switch to T-Mobile, and they say, oh, T-Mobile's terrible, and then they go back to AT&T, and it's the same story all over again. So the carriers are just not that great. But if there's competition, suddenly these carriers can be great again, which should be T-Mobile's slogan. To borrow from Trump, they should say, make carriers great again, which probably wouldn't be too popular, actually, because I don't really see people as going for that one, but oh well. So the FCC is auctioning off the 600 megahertz range from TV broadcasters. Thank goodness, because who watches broadcast TV anyway? T-Mobile has already covered more than half of the U.S. population with a low-band spectrum since buying the 700 megahertz A-block airwaves from Verizon early last year. The primary goal in the 600 megahertz auction is to acquire enough airwaves to cover the rest of the country, including a lot of rural areas, he said. So the idea here is that sometimes when you're out hiking, say, you actually kind of lose reception, and that's not cool. Nobody likes losing reception. Well, with this new low-band system, the goal is to have a continuous connection throughout the contiguous United States. And that's a cool idea. I hope it picks up, and I hope they win big with the 600 megahertz range. The FCC is reserving up to 30 megahertz in each geographic area for companies without huge low-band spectrum portfolios. T-Mobile pushed the FCC to set aside more than that, but today Carter said we're certainly not going to buy 30 megahertz. Carter didn't say, he's the CFO, by the way, of T-Mobile, how much T-Mobile would buy in markets where it lacks low-band spectrum, but he said the company could buy another 10 megahertz in markets where it already has 12 megahertz of the A-block spectrum. Carriers need lots of capacity in major urban areas, he noted. So basically, this is good for us. Although, as this Ars Technica article points out, T-Mobile does support LTE in higher frequencies, such as the 1,700 megahertz and 2,100 megahertz, which are really high frequencies, very line of sight. So it's going to be spotty. Those allow for faster speeds, but they do cover shorter distances, and they don't work very well indoors because, again, line of sight. The higher the frequency, the more line of sight it is. Think about those giant microwave satellite dishes that people use to broadcast TV from a satellite dish up to a satellite. Actually, I just saw one when I was in Nashville because the show that I went to was broadcasting over satellite, which then streams out to different theaters. And that's how I first watched it when I first watched it, but then I got to see it in person, and it was so cool. But anyway, yeah, they use a huge microwave dish, and it's actually got a little antenna. It's maybe an inch long, really tiny antenna, but it overcompensates with this giant dish. So while it is lacking in antenna, it's certainly not lacking in dish. And those giant satellite dishes point their manhood upwards at the sky, and they receive information from the satellite. Now, the problem with that is, say you get some wind and it knocks the satellite over just by a few centimeters, you lose your signal. Yeah, higher frequencies are very, very line of sight. You got to be pointing at it nearly exactly, and that's hard to set up. Fortunately, we have like computer-controlled satellite trucks that'll do it automatically, and it's really nice. But for those of us who work in the radio industry and have to move satellite dishes ourselves by hand, not so fun. But anyway, it was an experience anyway. So T-Mobile is hoping to buy some higher frequencies and lower frequencies, which again is good for us. Now, this is not the only news about T-Mobile, I'm sorry to say, because there's been a huge data breach at T-Mobile. I am also sorry to say. So T-Mobile has highly personal data for 15 million T-Mobile applicants stolen by hackers. Hackers, according to Ars Technica, broke into a server and made off with names, driver's license numbers, why driver's license numbers, and other personal information belonging to more than 15 million U.S. consumers who applied for cell service from T-Mobile. Why does T-Mobile have your driver's license number? I don't get that. The breach was the result of an attack on a database maintained by credit reporting service Experian, which was then contracted to process credit applications for T-Mobile customers. T-Mobile CEO John Legere said in a statement that was posted online, the investigation in the hack has yet to be completed, but so far what we know is the compromise is known to affect people who applied for T-Mobile service between September the 1st, 2013 through September the 16th of this year. That's a pretty wide spectrum. It's at least the third data breach to affect Experian disclosed since March of 2013, which suggests perhaps that Experian is not so great at securing your credit, but oh well, not to throw around implications, but that seems to be the case. So obviously, he says, I am incredibly angry about this data breach, and we will institute a thorough investigation, a thorough review of our relationship with Experian. But right now, my top concern and first focus is assisting any and all consumers affected, Legere wrote. I take our customer and prospective customer privacy very seriously. And I like that very is in all caps, by the way, in his statement, which just shows the state of real professional statements where it's gotten so informal that they will actually put words in all caps in their statements. They take customer privacy very seriously. This is no small issue for us. I do want to assure our customers that neither T-Mobile systems nor network were part of this intrusion, and this did not involve any payment card numbers or bank account information. Oh, so it's okay because it was only your driver's license IDs for some odd reason. Now, that's a pretty big breach. Hey, caller, you're on the air. What's going on?
Russell, we are broadcasting live from Rome, Georgia.
Hey, represent.
Home of the air show that's taking place tomorrow and Sunday, and with me is a Chattanooga native, Kiara. How are you?
I'm fine, and yourself?
Doing wonderful, especially since I'm a weapons specialist.
I am.
You guys sign your names before you put that little missile on there?
No, we just load them up. It's easy. It's easier than it seems.
Really? You don't sign your name from the U.S. or from Kiara?
No.
Can I sign my name on one?
Mike can make that happen.
Man, I would love that. I'll take a picture of that. We also have Gabriel. How are you, Gabriel?
Doing good, sir. How are you?
What do you do with the F-22 Raptor?
I work avionics for the Raptor.
That's just way too cool. I mean, these guys look like they're just out of high school. And we have also Jonathan. Hi, Jonathan.
How you doing?
Jonathan is the crew chief, and
I'm the maintenance team chief for the Raptor demo team.
maintenance. So you guys keep the whole thing flying.
That's correct.
This is the meanest plane on the face of the earth, the YF-22 Raptor. I love this airplane. First sight, first shot, first kill.
That's right. Yeah, it's actually the F-22A Raptor, and it's an outstanding aircraft.
I'll tell you what, if that shows up with the A-10, we're all done. That's it. You see the A-10, but they retired the A-10, so it's moved.
Well, it's still flying right now, but the Raptor is an outstanding aircraft.
Tell me what you think the coolest thing about the Raptor is.
Its stealth capabilities. The fact that you can't see it on radar is really something else.
That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, well, when you're fighting a ghost, you don't really know what's coming.
Can they get that for us, guys?
What's that?
Not forget it. You heard me. He's like, what's that? My wife may be listening to her girlfriend. The show takes place tomorrow and Sunday. You got to check this out. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, along with the Charlie Daniels Band. And the Raptor is going to be flying tomorrow afternoon. We're not going to tell you when. It's going to be a surprise. I think the weather is going to be clearing tomorrow, too.
Yeah, let's hope. We hope so. Looks like the clouds are lifting right now, so maybe we'll get a practice in.
All right, there you go. The Raptor team that keeps it together here at Rome, Georgia, the air show tomorrow and Sunday. We'll be checking in all day today, tomorrow, and Sunday. Live from Rome, Georgia. Hot News Talk Radio. Back to our digital tech guy, the geek himself, Russell.
Hey, thanks. So, yeah, Georgia represent. Go check out the air show in Rome, Georgia tomorrow, a day after.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former Secretary of Education, Mr. William Bennett, whose controversial new book titled America the Strong is getting ready to hit bookstores this month. Don't miss a thought-provoking one-on-one conversation with William Bennett this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Authorities probing the background of the man behind the deadly shooting in Oregon yesterday.
Somebody is outside one of the doors, shooting through the door. There is a female in the computer lab.
Deputies arriving within 8 minutes of initial calls for help at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, but it was too late for 9 of the victims. Police say gunman Chris Harper Mercer died in a shootout with officers. Stocks sinking on Wall Street after dismal jobs numbers out.
Economists were calling for more than 200,000 jobs created in September, but only 142,000 jobs were added to non-farm payrolls.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland. And when Mike Flowers retires today with the Tuscaloosa Police Department in Alabama, he'll have spent 35 years on the force without ever taking a sick day. Not even back in 1980 when he had his arm in a splint after a motorcycle wreck. He plans to get a boat and spend more time on Alabama's Gulf Coast. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. News Talk 1240.
Hey, Hey, don't forget Wings Over North Georgia down in Rome, Georgia, which is going to be tomorrow and the day after. You know what? I'm even more excited about it just for the simple fact that it is in Georgia, because I am a Georgia boy myself, and I don't know, it makes me excited for some reason. Georgia is a cool state. There's a lot of great things that can be said about Georgia, and there's a lot of terrible things that could be said about every other state. So, as a Georgian, I'm very proud of my state in hosting this Wings Over North Georgia thing. There's something so cool about aviation too. The whole idea of these giant chunks of metal and aluminum, you know, all these different things flying through the air at huge speeds. You know, it's incredible stuff, and how fast we've progressed as well. Because if you look at, say, the progress from the Wright brothers back in the earlier 1900s all the way up to today, you know, just over 100 years, how far we've progressed. Even if you look at some of the first jet airplanes in the 1930s, I believe, that's not too long after the first airplane itself. We progressed into jets really quickly, actually. And it's just an amazing thing. And it's so cool to look at the history of aviation and all the different plane designs. And of course, there's the weapons side of it too, which is always really interesting. I've always been a fan of the A-10 myself. That's just always been my thing, is the A-10, because I love the sound of the gun. There's just something incredible about the sound of that gun. I look up different videos about it all the time, about the gun that's on the A-10, and it's just it sounds like a roar. It really does. It's just, if you haven't heard it, you really should, because it's great for radio. If I had a sound clip of it, I would play it. It's horrible. It's this burnt sound, and it's just amazing. And it's actually it's a plane that was essentially built around a gun. It's designed to take out tanks. It's just an amazing thing. I love it. But anyway, so if you are into getting high miles per gallon in your car, there's a cool new way to do that with the Elio, which is something that I've been interested in since I first read about it, which was maybe 2-3 months ago, I'm wanting to say. And no, I'm not shilling for them. I'm not being paid by Elio to say anything about it. I'm just noting that it's kind of an interesting new car. So a writer for TechCrunch got a chance to go check out the prototype version of the Elio, which is built by a company called Elio Motors, I believe down in actually a old GM factory in Louisiana, which interestingly enough is where my dad is from. So hey, cool. The car, which is technically classified as a motorcycle because of its 3 wheels, has already received about 45,000 pre-orders. Not bad, right? So like most heavy manufacturing startups, according to TechCrunch, the company's waiting on funding to enter production. Paul Elio, who's the founder and CEO of Elio Motors, says that the company needs about $300 million before they can start producing cars, and so far hasn't had any luck with the traditional routes of raising venture capital. Private equity won't do pre-revenue investments, and VCs think that the project is too big for an eventual follow-up check, explained Mr. Elio. However, the company is exploring a few non-traditional funding options, one of which will take advantage of Regulation A+, which is a new SEC regulation that will finally allow non-accredited investors to invest in private startup companies. So how cool is that? The provision of the Jobs Act, but only finalized in June, Regulation A+ essentially lets companies crowdfund up to $50 million in funding from anyone in return for a stake in the company. So Regulation A+ works as follows. Companies first enter a test the waters period where they can advertise that they're accepting investments, and then investors can pledge a non-binding amount. After getting significant interest, companies need to submit a Form 1A offering statement from the SEC, as well as complete a full financial audit. So long story short, it's a new way of getting revenue for Elio, or at least it's a new way of getting venture capital for Elio, which is quite exciting. And again, I'm not being paid to say anything nice about the Elio by any means. I'm not really paid to say anything nice about anybody, so that's why I'm so negative. But no, it's just a fascinating car because it does break so many conventions in how we think about cars. The Elio is a 2-seater, and it's a 2-seater in line, like in tandem. So you have a seat in front and you have a seat in back, and they're in line, sort of like motorcycles are, except with a full enclosure. Think of it like those 2-wheeled motorcycles where the 2 wheels are in the front, but it has an enclosure and it has climate control and a backup cam and all sorts of other things that make it just a neat little car. I hear that it has a decent 0 to 60 speed. 0 to 60 time, I should say. I think it's around like 9 seconds, I'm going to say. So it's not terrible. You know, it's not like a sports car. I'm sure somebody's gonna beef it up and soup it up and stick a turbo on there or something like that. But that's not how it comes stock. So as it is now, it's a decently impressive car, perhaps not under the hood, but in its specs, it's just a really interesting vehicle. And its low cost is sort of the most interesting part for a lot of people. I'm sure it's only around $6,000. I say around because there are different options you can get. So it's just a really interesting vehicle. I'm really excited to see what comes out of it. And I might try one out if opportunity arises. I would totally try. If somebody said, hey, drive my Elio, I would totally say yes. And another fun thing is that it might actually be manual transmission, which is even more exciting because I am so sick of automatic transmissions. I really am. I'm one of those guys who likes as few bells and whistles as possible. So I just want a thing to work. I want a thing to be the lowest common denominator of how it's going to work. And that's just it. I want it to be functional. I don't like pretty. I want functional, bare bones. It just works. And it looks like the Elio is going to be that way. And manual transmission is one exemplification of it just works and there's no bells and whistles. And so many cars now are just automatic transmission. I'm sick of it. I mean, I know automatic transmissions are not as bad as they used to be. It's not the 70s anymore. But still, I don't like automatic transmissions. It takes away from the driving experience for me. It almost makes me wish I drove in Europe because it seems like everyone wants to... it seems like everyone wants to drive a manual transmission in Europe. And I guess they're good at driving there because I can imagine all these kids that I know growing up, trying to drive manual transmission cars and just getting in awful wrecks. So I guess they're smarter over there when it comes to mechanical engineering. I don't know. But anyway, IBM has made an amazing new breakthrough when it comes to carbon nanotubes. Now, I don't want to get overly technical, right? Because if you start to get overly technical, then you lose people. And I don't want to do that because you would lose me if you started talking about, say, I don't know, what's something I'm not interested in. If you started talking about, what's something I'm not really interested in. If you start talking about fashion, and you start talking about fashion in a really technical way, and you start talking about layers and texture and color matching and all these different things. Look, dude, I don't care, man. I wear what I wear. I hope that it looks good when I walk out the door. And that's about as far as it goes. I mean, look at me. Come on. You know, I just wear what I hope is okay to wear when I walk out the door. And I hope that nobody looks at me like they just smell the rotten egg or something when I walk outside. So that's my idea of fashion is it works. I guess that's a common trend with me is it just works is my philosophy on pretty much everything is it needs to just work. I don't want to have to deal with a bunch of, jumping through hoops to get my computer to start, which is actually kind of funny considering I run Linux, but oh well. So IBM has made a breakthrough on carbon nanotube scaling down below 10 nanometers. Now, the reason that's a exciting thing is we have hit a wall when it comes to silicon in our processors. Now, we've hit a wall when it comes to our processors on the x86 architecture because that's the architecture we use on most of our desktop computers, even though IBM's Power architecture might actually be superior. There's always ARM as well, but it's a long story. Again, I don't want to lose people, so we won't get too deeply into it. Basically, the type of processor that most everyone uses on their desktop computer is called x86, and it's got certain clock speeds and yada yada, but it's just, I don't want to get overly technical. Hey, we got a caller coming in. And caller, you're on the air. What's going on? Oh, so much for that. Hey, don't you love it when that happens? Yeah, so the x86 architecture is a little bit outdated. And it's also kind of a Frankenstein because they're still implementing stuff in the x86 architecture that really should have kind of gone away in like the 90s. But anyway, so silicon has hit a wall. Silicon is what we use for the transistors, of which there are a billion in our processors. So we can't really scale it any better than we already have. It's kind of hit a wall. Moore's law is hit a snag. Well, if we come up with a new technology, a new substance to use in our transistors, then maybe we can hurdle that wall. Hey, caller, you're on the air. What's up?
Russell, the sun is actually shining here in Rome, Georgia. As a matter of fact, I'm going to switch over to our other system and let you know that I can actually hear you in the radio station way out here in...
You can hear the radio station, but you can't get cell coverage. There it is.
I know you didn't lose me. The sun is shining, Russell. The sun is shining in Rome, Georgia. So if you're looking for sunshine later today and tomorrow, The Weather Service is predicting by around 10 or 11 o'clock tomorrow for the clouds to be mainly, not all dissipated, but a mix of sun and clouds. And I think the air show is going to go on tomorrow. The vendors are scurrying to get set up. There's looks like a C1 130. The B-25 and the B-17 will be here, along with a full team of acrobatic performers. And you're going to see a show like you've never seen in this part of Georgia. They tell me that the planes are ready to go. There is a low ceiling right now of about, it looks like 800 feet. And once that lifts to around 1,500 feet, we'll be going through some of the routines today to get ready for tomorrow. And it looks like it's going to be lifting in about, based on my limited aviation experience, in about an hour or two. So don't think because it's raining there, it's raining everywhere. I remember when we were kids, we thought because it was raining where we were, it was raining all over the world. But the sun is shining here, Russell, in Rome, Georgia. I expect you may even be here tomorrow, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm planning to be there, actually, yeah. Yeah, so it's actually raining pretty bad over here, but it's good to hear that it's better down in Rome, Georgia.
I can tell you this, we're not going to get you up in an FY-22 because that is a one-seater. That is a single-seater fighter plane. But that will be performing tomorrow and Sunday along with the Charlie Daniels Band. And we are broadcasting live here from Rome, Georgia at the air show that's taking place tomorrow and Sunday with Hot News Talk Radio.
Hey, thanks. So that's Rome, Georgia. Tomorrow, the air show down there, Wings Over North Georgia, which is my neck of the woods down there. Rome, Georgia, tomorrow. You can go see Wings Over North Georgia. There's going to be all sorts of really cool military aircraft flying around. Hey, maybe they'll even bring you up in something. So it's going to be really great. I might even make an appearance down there. Not that you would recognize me, but hey, whatever. If you see some of the Hot News Talk Radio guys, go over and say hi, and I might be one of them. Who knows? So anyway, getting back to the architecture of these processors. So we've hit a wall when it comes to silicon, and we don't need to get into the whole specifics of it, but right now we kind of need a new substance to use in our processors because silicon has sort of run its course. So over the past few years, IBM has been pouring a great deal of time and effort into researching what's called carbon nanotubes, or CNTs. So the existence of single-walled carbon nanotubes and their marvelous semiconductor properties occurred independently of both NEC and IBM, and Big Blue has been interested in capitalizing on that discovery for well over a decade. And really, we've only started caring about carbon nanotubes on the consumer side. Actually, we kind of haven't yet, but really the attention started being drawn to it maybe 2-3 years ago. So it's sort of a new thing, caring about carbon nanotubes, but not for IBM because IBM is always ahead of the curve. So Extreme Tech has talked about the difficulties of scaling semiconductors as the distance between features shrinks with every passing generation. But the specific breakthrough IBM is claiming is in an area of chip design that hasn't really been discussed much. In conventional silicon, there's been a known problem. Semiconductors continue to shrink, and the contact area between metal and semiconductor hasn't really been scaling. Generally speaking, smaller contact areas lead to increased resistance, and increased resistance means higher heat. Manufacturers have fought back against these trends with a variety of methods, but the lack of contact scaling is one of the fundamental barriers to pushing silicon to ever smaller sizes. IBM believes that its carbon nanotube technology could actually solve that problem. EE Times has an excellent write-up on the technology, although it hilariously refers to EUV lithography as already in place, which is kind of odd. A declaration that the writer of the article is certain would surprise both Intel and TSMC, but whatever. The new approach involves welding, nano-welding, in fact, a nanotube with molybdenum. Before they are self-aligned as transistor channels. The final step is to actually heat the assembly all the way up to 850 Celsius, melting this substance off, and then creating carbide. According to Richard Doherty, I hate names like that, Doherty, there we go, of Envision Engineering. Sorry, Mr. Doherty, I just have a problem with your name. The solution gives IBM a unique advantage in scaling all the way down to 1.8 nanometers, or nanometers, depending on who you ask. So long story short, this means that processors are going to be shrinking as time goes by, and maybe the wall has been broken through. At least here's hoping, anyway. Well, the feds, oh boy, raided a cryptocurrency startup that's been accused of scamming $32 million from investors. The Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, announced on, not the Southeastern Conference, announced on Thursday that it sued a Southern California company over an alleged Ponzi scheme, resulting in a loss of investors of at least $32 million. Wow. The government's accusations are, in fact, if they are correct, that would make Gemcoin one of the largest digital currency-based financial schemes ever. So thousands of people in the United States and abroad are believed to have put money into a company, converting their cash into what's called Gemcoin, which is a Bitcoin sort of like cryptocurrency. Numerous online promotional videos in many different languages claim Gemcoin's parent company, Alliance Finance Group, or AFG, and its subsidiary, the United States Fine Investment Arts, controlled $50 billion in amber mine assets in Latin America. Now, is that actually true? Well, we allege that the defendant's false claims of riches that investors had realized from US FIA's amber mining activity never actually materialized, says Michelle Wayne Lane. Wow. Director of the Securities and Exchange Commission's Los Angeles office. That's what she said in a Thursday statement. In reality, as alleged in the complaint, the defendants were operating a fraudulent pyramid scheme that left many investors with nothing. So that just goes to show you, don't bother with pyramid schemes. There's another name for pyramid schemes that doesn't come to mind just now, but multi-level marketing. There we go. Don't get yourself involved in MLMs, because chances are you're not actually going to make any money, because that's usually how it goes. So no, I'm not interested in your odd energy drinks that you have boxes and boxes of in your house for some reason, because I really don't want to get involved in multi-level marketing. And no, I will not let you sponsor me to get into your program. I've had so many dealings with that, believe me. The unveiling of the federal civil lawsuit comes days after the United States Marshal Service and the Arcadia Police Department froze assets and raided corporate offices of at least 135 East Live Oak Avenue at 135 East Live Oak Avenue. Wow, they're making street names harder and harder to pronounce, in Arcadia, which is north of downtown LA. The companies now operate under a court-appointed receiver, Thomas Seaman, who did not return calls for comment, which just goes to show you that everything you see is not true. Everything is true. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted is basically how it goes. Now, what's happening is we're seeing a lot of different companies sort of ride the wave of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was a cool idea, still is a cool idea. It certainly, I would prefer it over what we're using now. Not that it's the best way of doing things, but I would rather have Bitcoin than the US dollar the way we're running it now. Now, I don't mean, do away with the US dollar entirely. No, I just mean do away with the system in which we're dealing with the US dollar. Because the US dollar is kind of, well, not really worth anything, except for what they tell you it's worth. That's kind of the thing. There's not really any actual physical value to a dollar. Seriously, hold on. I'll show you. I'll show you a dollar. I even have one, I think. I'll open up my wallet and let's just, take a look at one here. Yeah, here's a dollar. I have a few of them, actually. I'm impressed. $1, United States of America. And it even says $1. But well, hold on. What's a dollar, actually? Well, a dollar is actually a unit of measurement for gold, believe it or not. I don't remember what it is, but it's a unit of measurement for gold. Now, note at the top, it says Federal Reserve Note. Well, what is it noting? It's noting that it's a Federal Reserve note, basically. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. It also says on the left-hand side, this is from 2006, from the Secretary of Treasury, Henry M. I can't read his handwriting. Should get a better signature. And then on the back, it's got your usual occult nonsense. So what is it, though? I mean, what makes this valuable? I mean, I'm waving around a dollar, but I mean, what makes you want to take it in exchange for goods and services, other than the fact that you actually kind of have to because it says that you must accept it for goods and services? What makes this dollar actually worth anything? Who cares about this dollar? I mean, come on, let's take out even bigger. I got a $5 note, I got a $100 note, I got 20 Canadian dollars. Here's 20 Canadian dollars. Now, it's kind of cool, but the substance that it's printed on, it's not really worth anything. And plus, it's got the Queen of England on it, which I'm not a big fan, to be quite honest. And it's got two monuments, monument something in French. It's a Canadian national monument that's on the back of it there. So, but what's it worth? Well, not actually really anything in physical value. This dollar, this $20 Canadian, means nothing, really. I mean, if I gave you 20 Canadian dollars, that's a novelty. That's the fundamental thing that I've just realized, though, is that there's not any sort of international international continuity with paper dollars. Because if I go to Canada and I hand you a regular US dollar, say deeper into Canada, past the border, they don't care about that dollar. It's not worth anything to them. They'd have to go and exchange it. So this $20 Canadian here in the States, I mean, we're far away from the border down here in Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. I mean, this $20 Canadian means nothing other than novelty value. So it has no real physical value, whereas something such as, say, gold actually does, because there's an actual like real value to that. There's hard metal value that is consistent across countries. Whereas with a US dollar, not really, only because we've made agreements to say that it is worth something. It's not consistently valuable like a hard asset would be. There's nothing inherently valuable about a US dollar or any paper dollar. I'm not just bashing US currency, I'm bashing the whole currency system that we are presently using. There is nothing at all valuable about any of these dollars. Nothing. Who cares? I mean, if I gave you this dollar in, say, Uganda, you'd say, what's this? Give me Uganda dollars. Or say in Russia, you say, what's this? Give me rubles. I don't need this. This is not worth anything. But say back in the days of gold coinage, if I gave you even a Spanish doubloon as an example, and we were somewhere in, say, China, you would recognize the value of that, even though you don't necessarily recognize the markings on it. You'd say, oh, well, this is gold. I verify that it is, in fact, solid gold. I can melt this down, turn it into real currency that's valuable here in China. And it's exchangeable internationally. So it's sort of a universal currency. We can verify the worth of it across countries. It's consistently valuable, whereas paper dollars really aren't, because they're not really anything. I can't exchange them for anything. It's a promise for an exchange, or at least it's supposed to be. See, the US dollar, paper dollars, originally were meant to be representations of silver which existed in banks, which don't anymore. There's no silver in the banks anymore, except for maybe some half dollars, which actually are made of like 90-something% silver or 70-something% silver. But so maybe there is some silver in the banks, but not really intentionally. Still, though, it's not actually really worth anything other than just what they tell you it's worth. And it's not really worth anything internationally, except for in countries where they agree that it is worth something. So the whole money system we're using is quite flawed. And the Bitcoin system is not perfect. But to be quite honest with you, if I was given the option, somehow I had a magic button, you press this button and all of our currency systems will be shifted over to Bitcoin as opposed to what we're currently using for currency, I would probably actually press it, to be quite honest with you. TBH, I would press that button. Well, this is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 here on Hot News Talk Radio and hotnewstalkradio.com. Just go to the website, hotnewstalkradio.com. You can listen to us streaming live over the internet at hotnewstalkradio.com. Get the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone, and then just search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You know, Clutch with Keon Rose is coming up next. He's our resident sports expert. He's going to be talking about all of the different sportsy things that I have no idea what he's talking about half the time. But that's the cool thing about Clutch with Keon Rose, is that I can follow what he's talking about. Every other sports show, I don't know what they're talking about. When I listen to Clutch with Keon Rose, I actually get it. I'm starting to almost be into sports now. Wow.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.